Here, in the sanctuary of history, to fall asleep to, we curate an atmosphere where the past comes alive in the most enchanting way, setting the stage for your journey into dreamland. So, come, dear friends, and let us embark on this adventure together. The year is 1348, and the Black Death has descended upon Europe, leaving a trail of misery and death in its wake. In the midst of this chaos, King Edward III of England receives a disturbing letter from his brother, the Earl of Kent, accusing Sir Simon de Burghley, a prominent nobleman, of plotting against the king and poisoning the Queen Isabella of France. Suspicion falls upon Sir Simon's wife, the Lady Eleanor, who has conveniently departed for Normandy. King Edward, desperate for answers, seeks the help of none other than William de Bat, a secret agent known for his cunning and discretion. With the fate of his kingdom hanging in the balance, can William untangle this web of deceit and uncover the truth behind the poisoned chalice? Or will the Black Death claim another victim in the name of treachery? Deep within the bowels of London, in a hidden tavern frequented by spies and rogues, William de Bouvant sits hunched over a table nursing a tankard of ale. His sharp eyes, honed by years of subterfuge, scan the room, taking in every detail, every whispered word, every furtive glance. His attire is nondescript, blending him seamlessly into the crowd. He is a shadow, a ghost, unseen and unknown. His reputation as a master of disguise precedes him, whispered in hushed tones by those who know of his exploits. William is a chameleon, able to assume any identity with ease. From lowly servants to noble lords, his disguises are so flawless, so convincing, that even the closest scrutiny can't pierce the veil he weaves. He is the very definition of secrecy, a living embodiment of stealth. Summoned by the king to investigate the murky depths of treachery, poison and deceit, William finds himself at the center of a dangerous game. The stakes are high, and the players, shrouded in mystery, each with their own secrets to hide. His first lead, the enigmatic Lady Eleanor, wife of the accused Sir Simon de Burghley, has returned to Normandy, ostensibly to visit her ailing father. But could there be more to her journey than meets the eye? Rumors swirl around her, painting her as a cunning manipulator, a venomous viper at the heart of a conspiracy. Drawn to the intrigue, William finds himself inexplicably fascinated by the Lady Eleanor. Her every move, every word, every gesture becomes the focus of his attention. And as he delves deeper into her world, he begins to uncover a tapestry of deception, where appearances are deceiving and trust is a luxury one cannot afford. But William is not alone in his pursuit. A rival spy, sent by the cunning Earl of Kent, watches Eleanor closely, eager to gather intelligence for his master. Thus begins a cat-and-mouse game of espionage, where every move is calculated, every encounter laden with hidden motives. The two spies move like phantoms in the shadows, their every step a testament to patience and cunning. One wrong move, one slip of the tongue, and lives hang in the balance. As the game intensifies, William finds himself torn between duty and desire. His mission is clear: uncover the truth. But his feelings for Eleanor, though unexpected, are equally compelling. He grapples with these conflicting emotions, torn between his sworn duty and the growing affection he feels for the enigmatic lady. Can he expose her if she is indeed a conspirator, or will his heart betray his duty? Days turn into weeks. As William closes in on Eleanor, his determination to uncover the truth unwavering. He observes her, studies her, trying to decipher the enigma that is the Lady Eleanor. Each interaction, every stolen glance brings him closer, not only to the truth, but also to a love he never anticipated. Yet the shadow of suspicion looms large, clouding the clarity of his feelings and blurring the line between his personal life and his dangerous mission. Finally, the moment of truth arrives. William confronts Eleanor, his heart heavy with the burden of his duty. The truth, when it comes, is like a sharp blade, piercing the illusions and cutting through the deceit. But as the final pieces of the puzzle fall into place, William realizes that the real enemy isn't poison or treachery, but the darkness that lurks within the human heart. In the end, the Lady Eleanor stands, revealed, her true colors on full display. The truth, when it is finally unveiled, is both shocking and heartbreaking. The poison, the lies, the deceit, they were all part of a grander scheme, a testament to the lengths one would go to protect their own. William, disillusioned and betrayed, finds himself at a crossroads. His mission accomplished, he must now choose between his duty to the crown and his love for Eleanor. As the final scenes unfold, the Black Death continues its relentless march across England, serving as a grim reminder of the world's fragility. The confrontation between William and Eleanor takes on a new urgency. The ticking clock of the plague adds a layer of desperation to their emotional turmoil. With the truth revealed, William is left grappling with the moral complexities of his findings. Exposing Eleanor would bring ruin to her and her family, but keeping her secret would be a betrayal of his king and his kingdom. Torn between his sense of justice and his love for Eleanor, William makes a choice that will have far-reaching consequences. In the heart of 14th century England, amid the desolation brought by the Black Death, a story of love, deceit, and duty reaches its climax. William de Bouvant, the master spy, stands as a beacon of resilience, his choices echoing the turmoil of a nation on the brink. His journey into the shadowy world of intrigue and betrayal serves as a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk even in the brightest of courts. Tonight, I want to share with you a story about a medieval spy. This character is actually from a novel called The Winter King. This is not a book that I've read, but after reading the summary and a few reviews, this sounds like a great story set in 14th century France, and this character seems very interesting. In the story, you are a medieval spy who serves the French crown. From the moment you can remember, you have been in the service of the king. After the death of your parents, the king took you under his wing, so to speak, and raised you to be his spy. At least, that's how it was sold to you. In reality, the king was using you. He molded you into a weapon, nothing more. You learned to fight, to ride horses, to hunt and survive in the wilderness. You also learned everything about poisons, how to use them and how to counter them. Basically, if there was a way to kill someone, you knew it. Or perhaps more importantly, you know how to make it look like their death was an accident. They told you serving the crown was noble, but no one warned you of the danger in every shadow. The eyes watching, the capture expected, the pain inflicted, the truth ignored. If caught, torture awaits. The rack, the boot, the scavenger's daughter, pain, forces, confessions. Truth doesn't matter. For the king, you are willing to do whatever it takes. You will betray anyone, kill anyone, become anyone. However, lately, you've started to wonder if it's all worth it. Is this Game of Thrones worth it? Is serving the crown worth it? Is being away from home, family and friends worth it? When you look back, you realize that you don't really have any real memories of your childhood. You can't remember the faces of your parents. You only know what they smelled like, the sound of their voices and the feel of their touch. All you have are fragmented memories of a life before the king took you in. As you walk down the dark and narrow castle halls, you try to push away these thoughts, but they always come back. Sometimes they keep you awake at night, wondering why you do what you do, wondering what life could have been like if things had turned out differently. But then you remind yourself, there is no time to think like this. There is no time to feel sorry for yourself. Not now. Not ever. Because tonight you have an assignment, one that will take you to a small village where you will meet with a fellow spy. You have both been sent to retrieve a mysterious package from a local inn. You don't know what the package contains, but you suspect it has something to do with the ongoing war between France and England. Once you arrive at your destination, you check into a small room above the bustling tavern. You need to rest because tomorrow is when the drop will take place. As you lay in bed, trying to sleep, you'll suddenly hear a commotion outside your window. Someone is climbing up the wall. Your first instinct is to stay perfectly still, hoping that whoever it is will climb over your window and move on. But then you hear footsteps in the hallway. Then a voice says, "Open up," followed by loud banging on the door. The voice says again, "Open up. We know you're in there." Your heart begins to race. You have no idea what to do. You don't know who's out there. Is this part of the mission? Are you being tested? Or are these men really after you? Then you remember your training. You quickly get out of bed and start to move things around the room. You unhook your rug and move it over the wooden floor. Then you put on your heavy boots and grab your sword. You know that if you leave the room, you will probably die. But staying here is also dangerous. So you decide to go. You open the door and immediately run out into the darkness. You hear shouts and see torches being waved around. You know that they can't see you, but you can see them. There is no way out of this courtyard. You are trapped. Suddenly, one of them sees you. There he is. He shouts, "Get him!" Now they can see you and they are coming for you. Your instincts kick in and you run. You run and you run, but they are fast and soon you will tire. What do you do? Do you fight? Do you surrender? Perhaps you escape into the night. Maybe you run to the nearest guard and tell them to help you. Or maybe you simply stand your ground and wait for them to come to you. You run through the streets, weaving in and out of people, desperate to get away. But they are close behind you, and soon you can hear them gaining on you. You turn down a dark alleyway, and continue running until you reach the end. In front of you is a dead end, a high stone wall with no way out. You are trapped. You turn around, knowing that there is nowhere else to go. One of them steps forward and raises his sword. "It's over," he says. "Give up. You don't know what to do. You've never been in this position before. Are they really going to kill you?" Suddenly, you feel a hand on your shoulder. You turn around and come face to face with the most beautiful woman you have ever seen. She looks at you and smiles. "Don't be afraid," she says. "I'm here to help you." And with that, she draws her sword and charges at your attackers. The woman fights like a warrior, deflecting their attacks and sending them flying. She is strong and skilled, and it's clear that she means business. One of them tries to stab her, but she dodges and kicks him in the groin. Another one tries to strike her with a sword, but she grabs his wrist and twists it until he screams in pain. She takes his sword and throws it to the ground. "Get away from her," she shouts. And they do, leaving us alone. She turns to you and asks, "Are you hurt?" You shake your head. "No, I'm fine." You say, "Thank you for helping me." She smiles. "It was no trouble. Are you a spy for the king?" You nod. "Yes, I am. So am I." To be exposed as a spy was to be exposed to the worst punishment in places where you couldn't be found. He found himself standing before a stone door set deep within the bowels of the castle, so low it was almost invisible. Above it, a single word carved in grotesque letters, "Oblivion." It was flanked by two snarling wolf heads, whose gaping maws seemed to writhe in anticipation of whatever horror lay beyond. The sight of them sent shivers down Thomas's spine. He knew that if anyone found this place, there would be no escape. He pressed his shoulder against the door, willing it to open. It didn't budge. He rattled the handle. It was locked. Was this his end? Had the Lady Eleanor led him here only to abandon him? No, she wouldn't do that, would she? Doubt gnawed at him, whispering insidious suggestions in his ear. Could this be a trap? Was he walking into a viper's nest? But then he heard it, a soft, plaintive meow. He froze. He wasn't alone. Whatever shared this place with him, it was alive. He could hear it moving about, padding softly on the stone floor. It sounded small, feline, yet undeniably alive. His fingers tightened around the hilt of his dagger. Was it friend or foe? With a shaky hand, he pulled back the hood of his robe, revealing his face, pale and drawn with exhaustion. His dark hair, usually so carefully combed and styled, was tangled and unkempt, framing eyes that shone with a feverish light. Despite his noble birth, he looked more like a disheveled beggar than a knight-errant, more like a hunted animal than a hunter. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was circular, its walls smooth and featureless, like the belly of some great beast. Its ceiling was lost in the gloom above, and a single shaft of moonlight sliced through the darkness, illuminating swirling dust motes and revealing a yawning chasm in the center of the room. A shaft had been left open, leading down into an abyss that reeked of stale waste and something else, something Thomas couldn't quite place. In the center of the shaft stood a bucket, its chain dangling into the darkness like the noose of a gibbet. Beside it, a single lantern sputtered, casting grotesque shadows that danced on the wall. As he watched, mesmerized, a gaunt figure emerged from the gloom. She was tall and thin, her face hidden behind a heavy hood, even from a distance. Thomas could see that she moved with a strange, unsettling grace, like a cat stalking its prey. She circled the room, never taking her eyes off him, and he couldn't help but feel a prickle of unease crawl up his neck. Who was she? What did she want? As she drew closer, he saw that her black hood was edged with a white fur that glistened in the dim light. And when she finally lifted her head, he gasped. Her face was as white as bone, her eyes as black as pitch. She was beautiful in a way that made his breath catch in his throat. But there was something about her, something in the depths of those fathomless eyes that chilled him to the bone. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice hoarse from disuse. She tilted her head, regarding him with a cool gaze. "A friend," she purred, her voice a silken whisper that seemed to slither around him. "Or perhaps an enemy. It all depends on which game you wish to play." She paused, circling him like a predator. "I see you have brought me a gift," she said, gesturing to the bucket with a gloved hand. "How thoughtful of you." Thomas frowned. What gift? Then he realized with a jolt that the bucket was filled with human bones. His breath hitched in his throat. Was this some kind of sick joke? But why? And who were these bones? The woman in black chuckled, a low, throaty sound that echoed in the vast emptiness. "Do not look so shocked, my dear Thomas," she said, her eyes glittering with amusement. "These are simply the remnants of our past, a little reminder of who we used to be before the fall." She took a step closer, and Thomas could see that her skin was as white as marble, almost translucent, with veins that traced eerie paths across her arms. Her fingers were long and slender, tipped with wickedly sharp nails, and he couldn't help but notice how she moved, how every gesture was just a little too fluid, a little too graceful, like a phantom limb twitching in a dream. And then he saw it, a flash of something metallic beneath her skirts. He blinked, trying to focus, and realized with a surge of dawning horror that she was wearing armor. It was a breastplate etched with snarling wolves and wreathed with thorns. And it was a sign of allegiance to the very forces that had imprisoned him here. The realization hit him like a physical blow, knocking the breath out of his lungs. He stumbled back, knocking over the bucket. The bones spilled onto the floor, clattering like dice in a graveyard. And in that instant, he understood. This wasn't just a prison. This was a tomb. And he wasn't alone. He was trapped in a cage with a nightmare that had been waiting for him in the darkness. Terror coiled in his stomach, cold and constricting. He wanted to scream, to claw at the walls, to break free and escape this suffocating terror. But he couldn't. He was frozen in place, his whole body trembling, his eyes locked on the creature before him. As if sensing his terror, the woman in black smiled, a slow, predatory grin that revealed teeth that were just a little too sharp, a little too long. "Do not be afraid, Thomas," she purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I am here to help you, to free you from your prison." He shook his head, his throat too tight to speak. He knew that smile, that voice, they were a trap, a lure, and he was the bait. She took another step forward, and Thomas flinched, instinctively reaching for the dagger hidden beneath his robe. But it was too late. She was upon him in an instant, her movements so swift and silent that he didn't see it coming until it was too late. Her fingers were like talons, digging into his flesh, her nails as sharp as shards of glass. He cried out, his hand flying to his chest as blood welled up, warm and sticky. She had ripped his disguise, his armor, and plunged her nails deep into his breastplate, tearing it open. But it wasn't his armor she was after, it was his heart, and with a sickening crunch, she crushed it. He gasped, collapsing to his knees as darkness closed in around him. The last thing he saw was the woman in black, looming over him, her face a mask of triumph, her eyes gleaming with a terrible light. "Welcome to the family, Thomas," she hissed, her voice like silk and steel. "Welcome to the Shadow Court." As the darkness consumed him, he felt a surge of raw, untamed power course through his veins. It was intoxicating, addictive, and it promised him vengeance, power, dominion. It whispered to him of an ancient legacy, of blood and iron, of a destiny that was his by birthright. His vision swam, the edges blurring. As the shadows enveloped him, he felt himself being pulled, dragged down into the abyss, into the very heart of the earth. He struggled, kicking out, clawing at the darkness, but it was no use. The more he fought, the deeper he sank. He closed his eyes, accepting his fate, embracing the oblivion that awaited him. Let the darkness take him, let it consume him, for in death he would be reborn. He would rise again, stronger, darker. He would become the very shadow that had claimed him, the embodiment of the night. And as the last vestiges of light faded from his eyes, he whispered a single word, a word that held all of his anguish, all of his rage, all of his sorrow, despair. Then there was only silence, only the echo of his pain in the vast, unending darkness. And above, in the lonely tower, the moon slipped from view, leaving the oubliette in total darkness, a monument to despair, a tomb of forgotten screams. For here, in the heart of the earth, where sunlight dared not reach, there was only oblivion. 3 times I've been sent back in time to save the world. And then you start to talk to yourself. And each time I've started to talk to myself. The first time it happened, I was confused. I thought I was going crazy. And then I realized that I wasn't the only one who could hear me. The second time it happened, I tried to stop myself, but I couldn't. And now, the third time it's happening, I'm just tired. I don't want to fight anymore. But the thing is, I can't stop talking even if I wanted to. The first 2 times I went back in time, I did it willingly. The third time, well, I didn't have much of a choice. I was on a mission when the world started to break around me. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on cold concrete, staring up at a sky full of stars. Familiar faces swam into view above me. They were concerned, their brows furrowed with worry. But before they could say anything, I sat up and looked over. There was a girl standing in front of the mirror, splashing water on her face. Her hair was tangled and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. When she turned around, I saw that it was me. Or rather, it was me in this version of the world. In this reality, we had failed. She was covered in grime, her clothes torn and stained. It took every ounce of willpower I had to not reach out to her, to not tell her everything would be all right, because I knew that if I touched her, one had to get out of there. I ran down the street until I reached a familiar bakery. My bakery. I walked inside and found myself staring at an old version of my best friend. She looked up from behind the counter and smiled at me. In this reality, she had never met me, or at least not yet. I didn't have time to explain. I didn't have time to do anything but grab a loaf of bread and run. As I ran, I started talking. I was saying things without thinking, trying to make sense of what was happening. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I think it was something along the lines of, "Why am I here? Why did he send me back again?" Then I realized that I wasn't the only one who could hear me. The shadows on the wall were listening. I stopped running and turned around, but there was nothing there, just the shadows. I continued walking. As I moved through the city, I talked to myself. I tried to remember my orders, my mission, my real name. I know it sounds stupid, but I couldn't remember any of it. It was like everything important about me had been wiped clean. I mean, I knew I was a soldier. I knew I had been trained to fight, to kill. But why? Why was I sent back in time 3 times to do what? To save the world. Maybe, but from what? That's what I was trying to figure out. Then I remembered a dream I'd had. I had been fighting in a war, but it wasn't my war. I didn't know what side I was on. I didn't know who I was fighting for. I didn't know anything except that there was a boy who was being hunted. He kept calling me by a name I thought was mine. But when I woke up, I couldn't remember what it was. All I had was a feeling, a certainty that the answer lay somewhere in this city, hidden in plain sight. I just had to find it. But the longer I walked, the more the silence ate away at me. It unravels your memory like old twine coming apart in your hands. You start to forget who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and if you let it, it will consume you completely. So I forced myself to keep moving, to keep talking even when no one was around, because in some strange way, speaking out loud helped me remember. It reminded me of who I was, of who I needed to be. Then I heard voices, 2 people arguing, their words sharp and angry. I hid in the shadows and watched them pass by. The girl was crying, her shoulders shaking with sobs. The man kept telling her to calm down, but he was being no help at all. I wanted to go after them, to comfort the girl, but I didn't. I knew that if I touched her, I'd lose everything. All my memories, my purpose, my mission. I couldn't afford to risk it, so I continued walking, talking to myself, trying to piece together what had happened in this reality, in this world, where I learned something terrible. I learned that the timeline isn't linear. It's more like a tree with branches that grow in all directions. Each time I go back, I'm changing something, setting off a new chain of events. And because of that, I haven't been able to fix anything. I don't remember how long I walked. I don't remember where I went. I don't remember anything except the words coming out of my mouth, repeating themselves over and over again. Who am I? What am I doing here? Why can't I remember? I don't know why I kept talking. Maybe it was to keep myself sane. Maybe to keep myself from hurting anyone. Or maybe it was because, even though no one could hear me, I wasn't alone. The shadows were listening. They were taking in every word I said, every step I took. They were absorbing me, becoming me. And then the darkness started to fade away. I could feel my memories returning, flooding back into me like a tidal wave. I remembered my mission, my orders, my real name. I remembered everything. At the same time, the voices in my head grew louder, more insistent. I could feel the shadows reaching out for me, trying to pull me back into the darkness, but I didn't let them. I fought against them with everything I had, with everything I am. And as I did, I remembered who I was. I remembered why I was here. I remembered what I had to do. I am a soldier. I am a protector. I am a warrior. I am a fighter, and I will not give up. I will not rest. I will not stop until the world is safe, until the world is free. Now the voices are gone, and so are the shadows. I am left standing in the middle of the street with the memories of 1,000 lifetimes on my shoulders. I know what I have to do. I just don't know where to start. I look down at my hands, at the weapons in my palms. I close my eyes and listen to the wind as it whispers its secrets to me. Secrets of the past, secrets of the future, secrets of the world. I take a deep breath and step forward, my boots echoing on the pavement. I am not afraid. I am not alone. I am not lost. I am found. I am home. I walk into the sunrise, my eyes fixed on the horizon, my heart filled with determination. There is work to be done. There is a world to be saved. I am ready. I am willing. I am strong. I am unstoppable. We are time ghosts, and this is Spies of the Middle Ages. Picture yourself once more in the medieval world, but now, as the night deepens, consider the web of shadows in which a spy must walk. The life of a medieval spy was a house of mirrors, where trust was as dangerous as any blade. A wrong move could mean exposure, imprisonment, or death. And even if they succeeded, few spies ever received credit for their work. Spies were one of the most secretive groups of people in medieval history. Often working in the shadows, they gathered intelligence for heads of state and other powerful figures. They infiltrated enemy courts, uncovered secrets, and even engaged in acts of sabotage. However, very little is known about them because that was the whole point of the job. In order to do their jobs effectively, spies had to be covert. They were so secretive, in fact, that there aren't any surviving spy manuals from the Middle Ages. We have no records of spy training programs. We don't know who exactly employed them or what services they offered, so we really don't know how extensive spy networks were in the Middle Ages. What we do know comes from accounts by those who caught spies in the act or uncovered plots that were hatched by foreign agents. From these accounts, we can paint a picture of the general duties of a medieval spy and the risks they took to complete their missions. In the early Middle Ages, following the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, Europe descended into a period known as the Dark Ages. This lasted until the 10th century, when conditions began to improve and the continent started to progress out of the medieval period. But during the Dark Ages, life was tough and many people felt like they had nothing to lose. This created a breeding ground for mercenaries and spies. Given the lack of formal record keeping, it's difficult to identify individual spies from this time period. But we do have accounts of spy rings. For example, in the late 700s, a Frankish king named Carloman had to contend with an Anglo-Saxon mercenary band that was hired to assassinate him. While he managed to survive the attempt on his life, the fact that such a plot existed highlights the precarious nature of power in the early Middle Ages and the prevalence of During this period, kingdoms were often at war, and the threat of invasion was always present. As a result, rulers were constantly on the lookout for spies from neighboring kingdoms. Sometimes the lines between spy and refugee were blurred. When someone crossed the border, they might have been carrying intelligence about their homeland, or they might just be fleeing for their life. For example, in 862, a man named Boulever fled to the Frankish court claiming to be a representative of the Moravian ruler Rostas. He told the Franks that the Khazars were planning an invasion and asked for military support. However, the Byzantine emperor was suspicious and sent his own agent to investigate. It turned out that Boulever was actually a Byzantine spy, and the whole story was a ruse to get the Franks to go to war with the Khazars, weakening them as an ally of the empire. During the High Middle Ages, which lasted from the 10th to the 13th centuries, spying became increasingly important. Kingdoms grew in size and power, and international conflicts became more complex. New technologies also played a role, such as the printing press, which made it easier to disseminate information. One famous spy from this era was a French woman named Nicole Aubry, who lived from 1180 to 1252. Not much is known about her life, but she left behind a legacy of intrigue and deception. Nicole was born in a small village in France and married a wealthy merchant named Hugues Aubry. Her husband was involved in shady dealings, and eventually the couple moved to Paris, where they became part of the city's intellectual elite. Nicole was a member of a literary circle that included some of the most brilliant minds of the time, such as the poet Jean d'Arc, but she was also a spy for the English king Henry III. During the war between England and France, Nicole used her position in society to gather intelligence and passed it on to the English through a secret network of couriers. She was particularly adept at gathering information about the French king's court, and was able to provide valuable insights into the plans of the French military. Although Nicole's activities were highly dangerous, she managed to evade capture for most of her life. However, she was eventually exposed and arrested. In 1242, she was charged with treason and sentenced to death. Nicole's execution was a public affair, and she was executed in the Place de la Concorde in Paris. Despite the gruesome end to her story, Nicole Aubry's legacy as a spy lived on in the centuries that followed. Her story has inspired countless works of fiction, and she remains one of the most famous spies in history. While Nicole Aubry's story is fascinating, it's important to remember that she was just one of many spies operating during the Middle Ages, during the Crusades. For example, European Christians and Muslim forces were in constant conflict in the Holy Land. Both sides employed spies too, gather intelligence on their enemies. European Christians in particular relied heavily on spies to keep tabs on the Muslim forces. One of the most infamous cases of espionage during the Crusades occurred in 1187 when a Christian spy named Gerard of Ridefard infiltrated the camp of the Muslim leader Saladin. Gerard posed as a pilgrim and managed to gain access to Saladin's tent, where he listened in on a conversation between the Muslim leader and his men. What they discussed was crucial information for the Christians who were preparing for a new crusade. However, Gerald was eventually discovered and imprisoned by Saladin, rather than executing him. However, Saladin decided to use Gerald to his advantage. He put the spy on trial for espionage and then released him with a warning to stay out of the Holy Land. Another interesting aspect of spying during the Crusades was the use of disguise. Spies often had to conceal their identity in order to gather intelligence and escape detection. One spy who excelled at disguise was a German monk named Brother Thomas. He infiltrated the camp of the Ayyubid dynasty in 1192 and managed to steal valuable military plans. When questioned by Saladin's forces, he was able to maintain his cover and escape with the plans intact. Spying during the Crusades wasn't limited to the battlefield. Religious leaders also employed spies to gather information on the other side. For example, in 1108, Pope Gregory VIII sent a spy named Fulk of Nayi to observe the Muslim forces in the Holy Land. Fulk was tasked with assessing the strength of the Muslim army and reporting back to the Pope. Although not much is known about Fulk's mission, it's clear that the Pope was interested in gathering intelligence on his enemies as well as military plans. Spying was an incredibly risky profession during the Crusades, and those who were caught often faced torture and execution. However, the information that spies were able to gather was invaluable and helped to shape the course of the Crusades. From infiltrating enemy camps to stealing important documents, these brave men and women risked their lives to gather intelligence and provide their employers with a valuable insight into their enemies. Their stories are a reminder of the often overlooked role that espionage played in shaping world history. Well, hello there. Welcome. Let's talk about King Charles VII. Now, the events that transpired during the French Revolution are so well known by now that it's almost cliché. We all know that when the revolution started, Louis XVI had no idea what was going on. Marie Antoinette was too busy eating her fancy cakes and having an affair with her Swedish countess or something like that, and that the whole royal family met a grisly end thanks to the guillotine. But we also know that these events didn't just magically appear out of thin air. There were decades of mounting tension that finally boiled over. And a lot of that tension can be attributed to one man, the man who was in charge of keeping order in France before things got out of hand, the man who could have prevented the revolution, Max de Beze, Marquis de Peza. Before we get into how he might have saved everyone a lot of trouble, let's just get some facts straight. Yes, his name is pronounced Pezzo, not peso. Yes, he did have a brothel at one point above his shop. He wasn't just a brothel owner, but a successful merchant tailor, selling his wares to the likes of Marie Antoinette herself. Yes, he was a mason. Whether or not Freemasons are a sinister organization or just a bunch of dudes hanging out and making some sweet wood carvings is up to you to decide. But he was a member of a Masonic lodge, which is a fact that will come back to bite him later. Yes, he was a spy. He spied on the British, not the Americans. It is important to clear this up, since it seems like some Americans are always quick to accuse any French person of being a British agent. And yes, despite the fact that he worked for the king, he owned slaves. Anyway, if you don't want to hear me talk about any of that, you can skip ahead to the next chapter by clicking the timestamps below. But those are the things that people used to paint a picture of a villain, a portrait that they would later try to force onto Max. You see, Max was doing his best to serve the crown. That was his main job as the Intendant of Paris, appointed by the king to keep the city running smoothly. It wasn't exactly his position was more akin to a modern-day mayor, and he was tasked with everything from public works projects to taxation to law enforcement, and he did his best to do his job. There was only one problem though. While he was good at it, the job was impossible. As the population of Paris grew, so did its problems. Food prices soared, poverty increased, and people began to blame the government for their woes. Now, what made this worse is that the nobility who lived in the countryside had little interest in helping the commoners in the cities. For them, the ideal tax burden looked like this, while the ideal spending on public services looked like this. Unfortunately for Max, though the king had given him the responsibility of making up the difference, and so Max did what any reasonable person would do. He tried to raise taxes on the nobility. Now, you can imagine how well that went over. When the nobles complained to the king, Louis XVI was furious. He may not have been great at his job, but he knew that the taxes were unfair, so he ordered Max to back off. However, after reading through the accounts, even the king had to admit that something had to be done. He told Max to do whatever he had to do to make ends meet. But then the queen came in and convinced the king to let the nobility off the hook. She wasn't cruel, you know. She just didn't think that raising taxes was a very Marie Antoinette kind of thing to do. And so Max was left to figure things out on his own. So he did what any reasonable person would do. He turned to the people. He built new sewers, paved the streets, created free public schools, set up soup kitchens, and built new hospitals. But still, there wasn't enough money. While the common people loved these new developments, they also hated Max for raising taxes to pay for them. But Max wasn't done yet. He was determined to save the city of Paris, even if it meant ruining his reputation. And then the American Revolution happened. You see, the American Revolution was a disaster for the French economy. They were losing a ton of money supporting the war effort, and things were getting pretty bad. When Louis XVI needed to cut costs, he decided to stop funding Max's projects and instead use his money to fund the war. Without outside funding, Max's projects failed. The streets were torn up, the buildings were abandoned, and the people blamed Max for breaking the city. They called him the Intendant of Misery. But then the king died. If you remember, Louis was never really keen on the whole taxing the nobility thing. And now, without the queen to advocate for them, the nobles took their revenge. They forced the young Louis XVII to sign away Max's position, stripping him of his powers and authority and leaving him alone in a city that hated him. Max was sent to Normandy to take over as the intendant there, but within a year he was recalled to Paris. Now, why would they recall a man who they had just stripped of his powers and was widely unpopular? Well, the crown, eager to maintain order, sought someone to blame. The lords, hungry for control, wanted someone to fear. The people, caught in the currents of rumor and suspicion, wanted someone to burn. And so they landed on Max. You see, the French Revolution had been building for decades, and there had to be a scapegoat. There had to be a symbol of the old regime. Someone to blame for all the problems that had finally reached a boiling point. And they chose Max because he represented everything that they hated about the old regime: a well-to-do merchant, a mason, a former police official, and most importantly, a man who had tried to tax them. However, this doesn't mean that Max was totally innocent. Sure, he was being framed, but the accusations against him were true. He was a slave owner, a mason, and he did own a brothel at one point. He wasn't some nefarious criminal, but he was flawed, and in this world, that was enough to condemn you. And so the revolution continued until Max was executed in 1793. Now, if you remember earlier, I mentioned that he had a brothel. This will become important in a minute. Anyway, after Max's execution, the revolution calmed down a bit. The Jacobin who had taken over started to realize that maybe they had gone a bit too far, and so they started to undo some of the damage that they had done, giving some of the nobles their power back. For example, and in 1795, they even brought back the monarchy under the Directory. However, their victory was short-lived. In 1799, Napoleon seized power and ended the revolution. Now, you may be wondering, why am I telling you all of this? Why should you care about some obscure French official? And the answer is simple. Because Max de Peza represents the dangers of historical memory. Just because someone is a hero to one group of people doesn't mean that they're a hero to everyone. Even if Max had never raised taxes, he still would have been an enemy to the commoners, because he was a part of the aristocracy. And even if he hadn't been involved in the revolution, he still would have been a victim of it, because he was a member of the clergy. We tend to remember history as a series of neat stories where good triumphs over evil. But in reality, history is much more complicated than that. Sometimes the good guys are actually the bad guys, and sometimes the bad guys are actually the good guys, and sometimes they're just regular people trying to do their jobs. As for me, I'm just a humble historian, trying to share the stories of the past with you. I'm not perfect, and I don't pretend to be, but I do my best to tell these stories as accurately as possible. I research every video thoroughly and cite my sources, but I also try to be engaging and entertaining. History isn't just about memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding the human story. Have you ever been betrayed? Come on, be honest. Don't worry. This is a judgment-free zone. There's no shame in being betrayed. We've all experienced it at one time or another. Betrayal by a friend, a lover, a family member, maybe even a pet. It's part of the human condition. But there's betrayal, And then there's being stabbed in the back by someone you trusted with your very life. Like when Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus into the hands of the Romans, or when Brutus and Cassius betrayed Caesar into the hands of the assassins, or when Benedict Arnold betrayed General Washington during the American Revolution. These are people who sold their soul for a mess of pottage. They didn't just betray people, they betrayed everything you and I hold dear. If you find yourself in such a situation, what should you do? Today we'll look at 8 times when it's best to cut bait and run. So, stick around. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. Give a big thumbs up. No one other times. You are pardoned until you are no longer useful. People can be very forgiving. After all, we're social creatures who rely on the cooperation of others to survive. We know that everyone makes mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes are forgivable. But when people forgive you and forget about your transgressions, only until they need something from you again, then you have to be very careful. This is called transactional forgiveness. It's not real forgiveness. It's conditional. And once the conditions change, so does the person. Think of the mob boss who forgives his underling for stealing from him, but then has him whacked when he finds out the guy talked to the cops. The mob boss forgave him until he wasn't useful anymore. People like this are dangerous, because you never know when they'll turn on you. No. 2. When they cross a line that cannot be we all have our boundaries. Things we won't tolerate. Maybe it's cheating on your spouse, or finding out your deepest secrets and then blackmailing you. Everyone's line is different. But once someone crosses yours, you have to consider whether that relationship can ever be repaired. For example, let's say you confided in a friend about an embarrassing personal issue, something you thought only he knew. Then he started making jokes about it in front of other people. You tell him that he hurt you, that it was insensitive, and he apologizes, but later you hear him repeating the story to someone else. Your boundary was violated twice. First, when he listened to your secret and then repeated it to others. If he'd apologized and left it alone, you might have been able to forgive him. But by repeating the story a second time, he showed you that he can't be trusted. Once a boundary is crossed, it loses its sanctity. It's like putting perfume on a garbage dump. No matter how much you try to cover it up, the smell will still be there. Number 3. When they show contempt for things you hold dear. When a person shows disrespect towards things you hold dear, it's a sign that they don't respect you either. They may not say it to your face, but their actions will speak louder than words. Let's say you have a deep religious faith. Then one day you find out your friend mocked your beliefs behind your back. Or maybe you have a strong sense of justice, but your friend supports a law that goes against your sense of right and wrong. When someone shows contempt for your core values, you can't keep them close without compromising your own integrity. You're better off walking away. When they treat you with disdain, another sign that someone doesn't respect you is when they treat you with disdain. They may be dismissive of your opinions, belittled your accomplishments, or treat you as if you're less than them. The person may not realize that they're doing it, or they may be doing it intentionally to boost their own ego. Either way, you don't deserve to be treated this way. No one does. If someone treats you with disrespect, why would you want to continue the relationship? Remember, you're not responsible for other people's behavior, but you are responsible for how you react to it. Disrespect is like a weed. If you let it grow unchecked, it will choke the life out of any relationship. No. 5. When they refuse to apologize. An apology is an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. It's a way of saying, I'm sorry for what I did. I take full responsibility for my actions, and I'll try not to do it again. A true apology comes from the heart. You can tell when someone means it, when they look you in the eye and say, I'm sorry. Some people aren't capable of giving a sincere apology. They think they're always right. They blame others for their mistakes. They make excuses or get defensive. They won't admit they're wrong, and as a result, they never learn from their mistakes. These are the people who never change. And if you're in a relationship with someone like this, you're just wasting your time. No. 6. When they lie to you. Liars are like chameleons. They can change their appearance at will, taking on whatever color they think will deceive you. They're skilled at hiding the truth and experts at distorting it. You never know where you stand with a liar. You can't trust anything they tell you, including their promises. I'm sorry, I was just doing what you told me to do. If someone lies to you once, it's probably because they think it'll protect you. But if they lie to you over and over again, it's because they have no respect for you. How can you build anything with someone who lies to you constantly? A house built on sand will eventually collapse. No. 7. When they never listen to you. Ever talked to someone who just wouldn't listen? They talk, but never listen. In a healthy relationship, both parties should listen to each other and try to understand the other person's point of view. But with these types of people, it's always one way. They're more interested in convincing you that you're wrong than listening to your side of the story. It's like trying to talk to a brick wall. Nothing gets through. And this can be very frustrating, especially if you're trying to express something very important to you. What do you do when someone won't listen? The best thing to do is to walk away. Why waste your breath? No. 8. When they refuse to help you. True friends are there for each other, especially during hard times. We all need help from time to time, and a true friend will drop whatever he's doing and come to your aid. He won't hesitate to lend a hand, offer words of comfort, or just be there to listen. But there are people who will turn their backs on you when you need them most. They're like that friend who bails you out of jail, but then tells everyone at work that you got arrested. If someone won't help you when you really need it, they're not your friend. They never were. You were just a pawn in their game. So what should you do when you find yourself in such a situation? Well, first of all, you need to be aware of the signs that someone doesn't respect you. It's not always easy to spot these signs, but once you become aware of them, you need to take action. Don't wait around hoping that things will improve. Take steps to protect yourself and those you care about. It is better to be alone than to be in the company of people who do you and respect you. Everyone deserves respect. It doesn't matter whether they are rich or poor, weak or strong, young or old. Everyone deserves our respect. We should not look down on anyone. We should not be arrogant or proud. We should be humble and modest. This is what it meant to survive as a medieval spy. You just lived long enough to watch the lies become history. Let the weight of this world settle over you now, as gently as the night outside your window. When you are ready, we will gently guide you towards the end of your journey. But there's one last part you need to hear. The lie that has been your shield and armor for so long can no longer protect you. We both know that. The cold seeped into your bones in every hour that passed without firelight or candlelight, and each one of those hours has stolen away at your resolve. I know who you are. I see through the walls you've built. I know why you came to me, and I know the truth of who you truly are. You were born under the light of a waning gibbous moon, which means that you entered this world with secrets in your heart. It was written in the stars from the moment you drew your first breath. Some people can look up at the heavens and believe they can predict futures with an accuracy that would shame even the most learned astrologers. The reason for this is because the knowledge of the future isn't held by the planets themselves. They don't care about us little worms squirming around on this tiny rock floating in the void. The only ones who can glimpse what is to come are those who have spent their lives chasing shadows and secrets. And when you're a spy, those shadows are all that you know. They whisper to you in the dark, and you listen because you have nothing else. And what do they say? They say that you have failed. Your life has always been a failure, and it always will be. The stars said that about you before you were born, and they're right. I see how the shock is slowly draining out of your face, being replaced by understanding. You aren't ready to accept it yet, though you never will be. But deep down, you already knew this. That's why you turned to astrology. It was the easiest way to escape the burden of knowing yourself too well. Or maybe you thought it could offer you some small measure of hope. But hope is a luxury spies cannot afford. If there is one thing you should have learned in your years in the shadows, it's that hope is a weakness. Hope is for those who believe that the world can be changed. You, my dear William, know better. Hope has no place in a world where men murder in the name of God and kings dance with devils while holding court. And you're right. I am going to kill you. I've known that from the moment you stepped through my door. You thought you were the first, that you were the greatest spy the world had ever seen. You think that the stories you tell yourself make you invincible, but they don't. The only stories that matter to me are the ones etched into these old books. And those stories hold truths that you couldn't even dream of, because your dreams are nothing but fantasies, nothing but pathetic attempts to convince yourself that there is good in this world. That is why you will die tonight. Because you are afraid of the dark. You don't want to admit it, but the darkness is what made you who you are. I'm going to rip the disguise off your face, William, and show you exactly what kind of monster you really are. What's hiding beneath that fine clothing, under the skin you've always prided yourself on, maintaining when you stood in front of the mirror this morning. Did you see a monster staring back at you? Did you hate that monster? Because if you didn't, then I'm afraid you already lost this battle long ago. The coldness that clings to you like a shroud is not the night air. It's the touch of death itself. You have walked so close to death so many times that it's drawn to you like a moth to a flame. And now it's here to collect what's owed. All of your tricks won't work on me. You can try to bluff me, threaten me, beg for mercy, but it won't matter. Nothing matters anymore. All that matters is that you pay for what you've done. How dare you mock me? I am the one who wields power here, and you are nothing but a worm squirming on the edge of oblivion. Do you feel that? Feel the floorboards beneath you? The very foundations of this house? This is my power, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Tell me, William, how many innocents have you sent to their graves? How many families have you torn apart? How many nights have you spent looking at the faces of men and women who trusted you, who believed you were something more than the monster you really are? And then you turned and ripped their hearts out anyway, because that's who you really are. A monster who hides behind pretty words and disguises. Do you remember every face, William? Every soul you've condemned? Or have you conveniently blocked them out? Because if you have, then that makes you even worse. Worse than a butcher cutting up livestock. Worse than a tax collector squeezing the last drop of blood out of a peasant. Worse than a clergyman who takes advantage of his flock. Worse than any of them. You are worse than all of them combined. But I won't let you take another life. I won't allow you to harm another innocent, because I am ending your story today. And no matter how much you hate it, you have to accept it. You have to accept that you have lost. You always did. You may not have felt it, but you lost. And as you die, you will finally understand who you were, who you are, and who you always will be. And maybe in death, you will finally find the peace that was denied to you in life. William, I'm sorry. I wish it could be different. I wish I could spare you, but you wouldn't be spared. No one could be spared when there's monsters in the world. There's no place in this world for a man like you. And I don't mean to hurt you, but I have to put an end to this. I have to put an end to you. You must die. You will die. You already have died. Now, William, I'm going to strip away your humanity. I'm going to tear apart the carefully constructed illusion you call yourself. I'm going to show you how truly alone you are, how utterly forsaken you are in this world. You are beyond saving, William. You are past redemption. There is nothing left for you but death. The flames roared in the hearth, dancing in a macabre ballet as the old woman cackled with delight. Her eyes gleamed with a manic energy, her gaze boring into William with the intensity of a hawk eyeing its prey. Each word she spat out was a venomous dart, aimed at the very core of his being. The room seemed to close in on him, the shadows deepening as if the very darkness was reveling in his terror. Suddenly, she stopped, her head tilted, as if listening to a sound just beyond his perception. A low growl rumbled in her throat, sending a shiver down William's spine. He tried to rise, to flee, but an unseen force pinned him to the chair, his struggles feeble and futile. The old woman's eyes flashed, and in a blink she was upon him, her gnarled hand gripping his throat with astonishing strength. So, she rasped, her voice like the scraping of bone on stone, "You thought you could deceive me, infiltrate my sanctuary, and steal my secrets. How very clever!" With each word, the pressure on his throat increased, making it hard for William to breathe. His vision started to blur, his hands clawing at the old woman's arm in a desperate attempt to free himself. But her grip was like iron, her strength unnatural. As the room spun around him, William realized he had been a fool. He had underestimated her, dismissed her as just an old woman. But she was something else, something ancient and evil, and now he was paying the price. We've learned so much about what life was like during that time period, and I hope you've enjoyed learning alongside me. Now, if you're new here, well, welcome. Come on in, pull up a chair, and if you've been with us for a while, then welcome home. It's always good to have you back. As we settle in, let's talk about today's prompt, which is all about spies. So I thought we would head into the world of espionage and check out what being a spy was like during the Middle Ages. Now, your first reaction might be to think that espionage wasn't really a thing during this time period, because you hear about it very often. But that's not necessarily true. You see, espionage comes in many forms. It doesn't just mean James Bond sneaking around and deflecting laser beams while looking cool doing it. No, espionage can be as simple as a peasant overhearing some information that might help the king they're working for, or even two kings discussing battle strategy while playing a game of chess. And when you look at it that way, there were plenty of opportunities for espionage in the Middle Ages. Spying was such an important part of any military campaign that most armies had spies. Now, these weren't highly trained agents who went through special academies, but they were usually just regular soldiers who had been chosen by their commanders to go out and find out information. They might have been chosen for how they looked like someone who could pass for a merchant or a woman traveling alone. Or they might have been chosen because of who they were, like a member of a noble family who could get close to the enemy leader. Whichever the case may be, spies had one job: find out information about the enemy. They needed to know things like where the enemy was staying, how many soldiers they had, and what their plans were. Spies also needed to be careful. If they were caught, they could be tortured and killed. For example, in 1296, 3 English spies were captured while gathering intelligence in Scotland. They were taken to Edinburgh Castle, tortured, and finally executed. To learn more about what life was like as a spy, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of a medieval spy. Let us say we're a member of the English nobility who has been asked by King Edward I to spy on the Scottish king, Robert the Bruce. Now, our world is about to change dramatically. We're no longer living our peaceful life as a nobleman. Instead, we're now a spy, living in a world where every shadow hides a threat and every ally is a risk. Trust is as deadly as a dagger in this game. We make our way through the crowded streets of Edinburgh, our heart pounding in our chest. We need to gather intelligence on the Scottish army. But the danger is everywhere. What if someone recognizes us? What if we're followed? Pain and fear become our constant companions. Each whisper in the tavern, each exchange in the marketplace feels loaded with danger. Even in silence, danger lurks. Our every move is a gamble, our every word a potential slip. We must tread carefully, for one wrong step could mean our doom. As the days turn into weeks, the pressure mounts. We need information, but the deeper we dig, the more perilous our situation becomes. Alliances shift like sand, and we must navigate this treacherous landscape without making a sound. But we're not alone in this. There are others who walk this path too, and they're not always who they seem to be. Deception is a weapon as sharp as any sword. We meet fellow spies, agents of the crown from other kingdoms, and for a moment, camaraderie warms us. But in this world, even camaraderie can be a dangerous game. Who among us is friend, and who is foe? Each encounter is a test, each conversation a tightrope walk. The stakes are high, and the danger is ever present. One false move, and we could expose our true identity, our mission, our very lives. The weight of secrets presses down on us, threatening to consume us. We carry the hopes and fears of our king, the fate of our kingdom, and the knowledge that if we fail, the consequences will be dire. Days blur into nights. As we delve deeper into the heart of this medieval labyrinth, we attend royal gatherings, rub shoulders with nobles, and listen intently. Every word, every gesture is a clue. But as the web of intrigue tightens, we find ourselves entangled in a dangerous game of cat and mouse. The enemy closes in, sensing our presence, and we must use all our cunning to stay one step ahead. The clock is ticking and the pressure mounts. We must gather the intelligence we need and escape before it's too late. With each passing moment, the danger grows. And in this high-stakes game of espionage, we're playing for keeps. Our medieval journey is about to end. The fate of a kingdom, perhaps even more, hangs in the balance. And we, the humble spies, walk into the lion's den. Every shadow hides a threat, every ally a risk. Can we navigate this treacherous world and emerge victorious? Or will we be lost in the labyrinth forever? Only time will tell. Let's see what you came up with. How did your medieval spy fare? Did they uncover the secrets they sought? Or were they lost in the shadows? Share your stories with us. Let's bring this medieval journey to a close together. So, let's dive into some of your stories, shall we? Okay, this one's pretty great. I love the idea of a spy being an unassuming traveling merchant. You know, it's a classic trope, but it works. I mean, who would suspect a lowly merchant of having royal connections? I can just imagine the double agents lurking in the taverns, disguised as fellow merchants, exchanging coded messages while discussing trade routes. Brilliant. And the bit about the alchemist is a nice touch, too. Alchemy was a bit of a wild card back then, wasn't it? Like, everyone was into it, but nobody really knew what was going on. It's like the medieval version of AI, you know? All the rage, all the hype, but nobody's really sure how it works. Imagine an alchemist spy brewing potions, not just for profit or for the advancement of science, but for the sake of gathering intel. Ooh, that's genius. Okay, next story. Oh, the king's fool. The jester with a secret past. I love it. I love it so much. Jesters were like the original tricksters, weren't they? Always poking fun at the king, saying the outrageous things that everyone else was thinking. But they were also often surprisingly wise. And the idea that the king's fool is actually a spy is brilliant. I could just picture him dancing and pranking his way into the good graces of the royal court, all while keeping his eyes and ears open for any intel he can gather. Plus, Think about the cover story. If anyone asks what the fool is up to, what does he know? He's just a silly court jester, right? Nobody would ever suspect. And then the reveal, the moment when the jester reveals his true identity and drops the act, that would be epic. Imagine the look on the faces of the courtiers as they realize they've been fooled. Let's take a look at this one. A spy as a traveling healer. That's a great one. I love it. I love it because it's so unexpected. Traveling healers were often seen as wandering minstrels, weren't they? They were part of the community, but also outsiders. They saw a lot of different people and places and were trusted with people's secrets, both because they were seen as harmless and because people wanted to confide in someone who was unpart of their local power structure. This story reminds me of those old adventure movies. You know, the ones where the hero goes into the village and there's a mysterious old woman who heals everyone's ailments and dispenses cryptic wisdom. Well, in this case, the mysterious old woman is actually a spy. She's not dispensing wisdom, she's dispensing secrets. I can just imagine her surrounded by villagers, listening intently while she heals their wounds. All the while she's gathering intel for the king. Brilliant. Medieval spies, secrets, lies, and deadly games. Picture this. You're lounging at home, safe and sound, enjoying the comforts of modern living. Life is good. Then suddenly, a chilling thought creeps in. What if someone were watching you? The idea of being spied upon sends shivers down your spine. But it's just a passing fancy, a momentary glitch in your otherwise peaceful life. Let your mind return to the present, where warmth and security embrace you. The dangers that stalked the medieval spies, the constant risk of betrayal, the anguish of torture, the loneliness of isolation are now just faint echoes from history. Here, in your peaceful haven, you are released from the heavy burdens carried by those who once moved unseen in the shadows. But for some individuals during the Middle Ages, espionage was not just a game, it was a way of life. They lived in a world where trust was a luxury, and every shadow held a potential threat. These were the secret agents, the undercover operatives who navigated the treacherous world of medieval espionage. Fasten your seatbelts as we take a thrilling ride through time, exploring the shadowy realm of medieval spies. From double agents to royal intrigue, we'll uncover the secrets and lies that define this dangerous profession. Welcome to our channel, where we bring history to life through captivating stories and visuals. In today's episode, we'll be delving into the hidden world of medieval spies. But before we begin our journey, we've got a question for you. What do you think was the most challenging part of being a spy during the Middle Ages? Share your thoughts below and let's dive in. Imagine walking down a bustling medieval street. The sights and sounds of daily life all around you, but beneath the surface, there's a hidden current of activity, a silent game of cat and mouse. This was the world of medieval spies, where deception and danger lurked around every corner. Spies during the Middle Ages were often motivated by patriotism or a desire for personal gain. They worked for kings, queens, nobles, and even the church, gathering intelligence on a variety of matters. Some were sent to monitor the activities of rival courts, while others were tasked with uncovering the plots and conspiracies brewing within their own kingdoms. The job required a special kind of person, someone who could keep secrets close to their chest and navigate the complexities of courtly life with ease. They had to be quick-witted, charming and resourceful, able to adapt to changing circumstances and think on their feet, but perhaps most importantly, they needed to be utterly ruthless. Betrayal was a constant threat. Spies had to be prepared to sacrifice anyone, even themselves, to protect their cover and their mission. Despite the dangers, the work was not without its rewards. Spies who successfully uncovered secrets that benefited their employers could rise to great heights. Some became trusted advisors to the crown, while others were rewarded with land, titles, and even positions of power. However, the life of a medieval spy was not all glamour and intrigue. Much of their work was dirty and dangerous. Spies often had to operate in disguise, living under false identities and constantly worrying about being exposed. They were also at risk of torture and execution if they were caught. The stakes were high and the risks were real. So what did the typical day in the life of a medieval spy look like? Let's find out. A new assignment. The year is 1485, and you are a spy working for King Henry VII of England. You've just returned from a mission in France and are enjoying a rare moment of relaxation in your lodgings when your contact in the King's court arrives with a new assignment. Secret rendezvous. Your target is none other than the Duke of Burgundy, a powerful noble who has been supplying the French king with valuable intelligence about Henry's military plans. The king suspects that the Duke is also involved in a plot to destabilize England's rule in France, and he wants you to find out if it is true. Preparing for the journey. You have 3 weeks to prepare for your journey to Burgundy's court. You know that you'll need to move quickly once you arrive, so you gather your supplies and rehearse your cover story. As a merchant traveling to Burgundy, you'll be staying at an inn in the city. You plan to visit the Duke's palace, attend a party and make valuable contacts who will help you on your mission. The journey begins. After a long and arduous journey, you finally reach Burgundy's court. The atmosphere is one of luxury and excess, but you know that appearances can be deceiving. You meet with your contact, who briefs you on the latest developments and gives you a key piece of information. The Duke's younger brother, the Marquis of Flanders, is a frequent visitor to the palace, and it is rumored that he is the leader of the conspiracy against Henry. If you can get close to him, you might be able to uncover the plot and foil it before it even starts. The art of deception. You spend the next few days at the inn, observing the comings and goings at the palace, and trying to make contact with the Marquis. Finally, you spot him entering the tavern and you make your move. You introduce yourself, strike up a conversation and plant a seed of doubt about the Duke's loyalty to Henry. The Marquis is intrigued and agrees to meet you again. The plot thickens. Over the next few days, you meet with the Marquis several times. You learn that he is indeed the leader of the conspiracy and that the Duke is planning to betray Henry and join the French king. The Marquis is suspicious of you, but you manage to evade his scrutiny and gather all the information you need. The escape. With your mission accomplished, you prepare to leave Burgundy. But you know that the Duke's spies are on your trail, and they won't hesitate to kill you if they catch you. You flee the city in disguise, making your way to a port where you can escape to England. A job well done. You return to England and report back to the king. Henry is furious about the Duke's betrayal, but he is grateful for the information you have brought back. You are rewarded with a noble title and a hefty sum of money, but you know that your work is never truly done. There are always new threats to the kingdom, and you will be there to defend it. The end. This brings us to the end of our journey through the life of a medieval spy. We hope you enjoyed this adventure and learned something new about this fascinating profession. Now it is time for you to take on the role of a spy. The full moon hung like a silver sickle in the velvet sky, casting long, dancing shadows across the cobbled streets of Hollow Creek. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and the murmur of late night revelry spilling from the tavern windows. But in the dim oil lamp light of the apothecary, Ilara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn night. She stirred the bubbling liquid in her mortar and pestle, her brow furrowed in concentration. Outside, the sounds of celebration grew louder, marking the annual Harvest Moon Festival. But inside the shop, it was just Ilara and the simmering cauldron. She wasn't one for parties, preferring the company of dusty tomes to that of boisterous villagers. It was as if a discordant note had been struck within her very bones, a primal alarm that refused to be ignored as the last of the festival goers ambled home, their laughter echoing in the empty street. Ilara finally lowered her pestle. The concoction she was brewing was nearly complete. Its purpose, a salve to soothe the persistent cough that had been plaguing Old Man Hemlock, but her thoughts were far from the ailment at hand. A nagging question echoed in her mind, demanding an answer. Why had she been unable to shake off this unsettling premonition all day? She glanced at the closed shutters of the neighboring bakery, a frown creasing her forehead. The thought of venturing into the revelry with its crowded streets and boisterous revelers sent a wave of discomfort through her. She much preferred the familiar confines of her shop, the comforting aroma of dried herbs and the silent wisdom of ancient texts. Yet something, perhaps a sliver of curiosity or a dash of the adventurous spirit that had brought her to this village all those years ago, compelled her to reconsider. With a deep breath, she decided to confront her unease head-on. Pulling on her hooded cloak, she stepped out into the cool night air, joining the ebb and flow of the celebrating villagers. As she moved through the crowd, she couldn't help but feel a sense of detachment. The joyous atmosphere did little to ease the tension coiling in her stomach. Each laugh, each song seemed to amplify the discordant note within her, driving her deeper into the unsettling feeling. Then through the din, she heard it, a voice that cut through the revelry like a shard of glass. It was the voice of the village elder, his usually jovial tone laced with an urgency that sent a shiver down Ilara's spine. He was speaking of a threat, some danger lurking at the edge of town, hidden in the shadows cast by the very moon that illuminated the scene. His words were fragmented, carried to her on the wind, but each fragment struck Ilara with the force of a hammer blow. Hidden in the shadows, whatever they were watching, waiting, danger at the edge of town. Suddenly, the playful jests of the crowd around her seemed jarringly out of place. The shadows at the edge of her vision took on menacing shapes. and the carefree laughter of the villagers rang in her ears with a hollow echo. The premonition that had been simmering within her now boiled, urging her to flee, to seek shelter. But instead, a different instinct, one that had been honed over years of tending to her village's physical and emotional ailments, took hold. She needed to find the source of this discord, to unravel the hidden threads of danger before they could ensnare her unsuspecting community. Elara excused herself from the crowd, slipping away from the boisterous revelers and making her way to the edge of town where the shadows were deepest. She found him slumped against the gnarled trunk of an ancient oak, his weathered face ashen in the moonlight. At the sight of him, a wave of relief washed over her, quickly followed by a surge of anger. Old man Hemlock. She had been so preoccupied with the discord in her own mind that she had forgotten about his lingering cough. Hadn't he been at the tavern earlier? How could he have left without her noticing? And why had he come here? Of all places, as she helped him up, concern etched lines on her face. She could see now that his breathing was labored, each inhale a shallow rasp. It was clear that his condition had taken a turn for the worse. Gently, she guided him back towards the center of town, her senses alert for any sign of danger. Reaching the relative safety of the village square, she knelt beside him, her gaze searching his face. "Can you tell me what happened, old man Hemlock?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with a terror that chilled her to the bone. "I tried to warn them," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I felt it too, the darkness, the evil, and I wanted to tell them, but no one listened. They just kept laughing, kept drinking." He coughed violently, his frail body racked with the effort. "You have to believe me," he gasped, reaching out a trembling hand. "There's danger here, real danger." Before Elara could respond, he slumped against her, his breathing growing shallow. In a panic, Elara sprang to her feet, her mind racing. She knew she needed help, but who could she turn to in this moment of crisis? Who would believe Hemlock Estee of encroaching evil when faced with the spectacle of a man collapsing in the middle of a festival? Desperation gnawed at her, and then she saw him, Lucas, the young apprentice whose family owned the inn where the festival was in full swing. With a silent prayer, she raced towards him, hoping against hope that he might be able to help. Lucas, bless his compassionate heart, didn't hesitate. Seeing the urgency in her eyes, he dropped the tankard he was holding and followed her without a word. Together, they rushed Old Man Hemlock back to Elara's apothecary, the nearest building to the chaos of the festival and the safest place they could think to bring him. Inside the dimly lit shop, Elara laid Old Man Hemlock down on a nearby cot. His breathing was slow and shallow, his skin clammy to the touch. With a mixture of herbal remedies and gentle encouragement, Elara managed to stabilize his condition, though the shadows of concern still lingered in his eyes. "You need to rest," she told him, her voice firm yet gentle. "Let me watch over you." He nodded weakly, succumbing to the pull of exhaustion. As she settled in beside him, watching over him, a determined glint entered her eye. She knew she couldn't afford to be distracted by worry or fear. She needed a plan, and fast. First, She needed to tend to the man on the cot. Then she had to find a way to warn the villagers without causing mass hysteria. As the night wore on, Alara found herself caught between two pressing concerns: the immediate care of Old Man Hemlock and the looming threat to her village. With careful ministrations, she kept watch over the sleeping elder, her movements economical and efficient. His labored breathing, though a constant reminder of the danger at hand, also served as a driving force, pushing her to find a solution quickly. Yet the weight of the impending threat, whatever it may be, pressed down on her, urging her to action. Time was of the essence, and she had to tread carefully. If she were to raise the alarm without solid evidence, she risked shattering the fragile piece of Hollow Creek. But if she waited too long, if she let fear take root and spread, the consequences could be dire. She was acutely aware of the trust and safety of her entire village resting on her next move, and as the night deepened, so did her resolve. The hour hand of the town's lone clock tower had passed the witching hour and slipped into the darkest part of the night. Within its cold stone depths, Old Tom was stirring. He sat bolt upright in bed, his wizened face creased with concern. Old Tom pushed back the heavy woolen blanket and climbed out of bed. He couldn't bear the thought of her falling into the clutches of the wily nobleman. But what could he do? At 72 summers old, he was little more than a farmer and stood no chance against Davenport's private army of men. He made his way silently out of the house, careful not to wake Alice or his two farm hands, who shared their home during the harsh winter months. Once outside, he pulled his threadbare cloak tighter around him and looked up at the moonless sky. All around him, the wind moaned through the bare branches of winter trees and rattled the frozen window panes. It sounded like a dirge for the impending doom that awaited them. Tom didn't know how to fight, but he did know how to hide. For over 30 years, he'd lived a double life as a member of the Night Watch, a secret society of men dedicated to protecting their land from invaders. The group operated in the dead of night, carrying out daring raids and infiltrating enemy camps to steal their plans. Their tactics were brutal and highly effective, making them the bane of every would-be conqueror in the kingdom. Now, with the memory of his father, a former leader of the Night Watch, urging him onwards, Old Tom set out across the frozen ground toward the hills. If he could make it to the highest peak, he'd be able to see 4 miles. Surely he could spot any movement in the valley below and warn the villagers in time. But as he struggled upward, a twig snapped beneath his foot, and a guttural voice boomed from above. "Going somewhere, old man?" Startled, Tom whirled around to see 3 burly men blocking his path. They wore the livery of House Davenport, a raven on a field of gold. Tom forced himself to stay calm, knowing that fear would only hasten his demise. "Just out for a bit of fresh air," he lied smoothly. "Might I pass?" The men exchanged glances. "Sure you are," one of them said with a sneer. "Seems awfully late for a stroll, don't you think? And why? Head up the hill. You trying to escape us?" Tom felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. He needed a miracle. And then he heard it. A soft, lilting voice cut through the darkness. "Gentlemen, might I trouble you for just a moment?" She emerged from behind a boulder, her white gown shimmering like moonlight on snow. The men blinked, stunned by her beauty. "Who are you?" one of them stammered. "Just a humble shepherdess, tending to her flock," she replied with a smile. "You looking for someone?" "We were, until just now," one of the men said, and they all burst into laughter, slapping Tom on the shoulder as they passed him by, heading down the hill toward the unsuspecting village. Tom watched them go, his heart pounding. Then he turned and fled, racing down the other side of the hill as fast as his old legs would carry him. He had to get to Alice. He had to get her out of the village. "I'm ready," she said, pulling on a hooded cloak over her nightgown. "Show me the way." Tom grabbed her hand and led her outside. "Don't you need anything else? Food? Water? Weapons?" she asked, looking back at their home. "No, we can't wait," Tom said, pulling her along. "They'll be here any minute." Together they ran, slipping through the shadows cast by the tall stone houses. Suddenly, a rough voice boomed behind them. "Hold it right there." They whirled around to see a man blocking their path. In his hand, he held a lantern that cast grotesque shadows on his grim face. "Sorry, mate, but I got orders to catch those to runaway farm folk," he said, advancing toward them. With the sword drawn, Tom stepped in front of his daughter, shielding her with his body. "Take my life, then, but leave her be," he told the guard. The man hesitated, surprised by the old farmer's sudden bravery. "My daughter's not yours to take," he said. As he did, Tom shoved Alice behind him and ducked under his guard, sending his sword clattering onto the cobblestones. Before the man could recover, Tom delivered a sharp kick to his knee. The guard howled in pain and collapsed. Grateful for the distraction, Alice snatched up the fallen sword and pointed it at the man's throat. "You were always a quick learner, Alice. Just like your mother." He took her hand, and together they continued their flight from the village. Behind them, the guards raised the alarm, and soon the whole village was awake. Villagers spilled out of their homes, looking around frantically for their loved ones. "Davenport's men are here," someone cried. "They're burning our town." Flames rose into the night sky, reflecting in the terrified eyes of the villagers. Tom and Alice ran as fast as they could, dodging between the burning buildings until they reached the edge of town. There, hidden in the shadows of a large oak tree, was another villager, a young man named Ben. Tom helped Alice onto the horse and then swung herself into the saddle. "I'm not going anywhere without you," she said. Tom felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to tell her to go, but he knew she wouldn't listen. So instead he simply nodded and they rode off into the darkness, Ben close behind. They traveled through the night, the sound of their horses' hooves drumming in Tom's ears. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Hold it right there." He whirled around and spurred his horse forward. It was the same guard they'd met earlier, and he was blocking their path with two companions. "Give it up," the guard yelled. "You're surrounded." Alice drew her sword and shouted, "Bring it on." But before the men could react, an arrow whizzed past her ear and lodged itself in the guard's horse, sending it crashing to the ground. Another arrow followed, knocking the second guard's weapon out of his hand. From the shadows of the trees, a third man emerged, and with a flick of his wrist, he notched another arrow. "Get out of here," he called to them. "I'll hold them off." Tom and Alice didn't need telling twice. They raced away as fast as they could, the sound of battle fading behind them. Soon they were safe in the forest, hidden among the ancient trees. As the first rays of dawn peeked through the canopy, Tom slumped to the ground, exhausted. Alice knelt beside him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. We did it together." "Father," she said, smiling. "We're safe now." Tom gazed up at the sky, a single tear tracing a path down his wrinkled cheek. "Yes, child, we are safe," he said, and with that he closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. As the castle's secrets fade into the night, let your thoughts leave behind the medieval spy and the woman spy, heroes who, together, outwitted their foes and rescued their village from peril. Return to the quiet safety of your own world, where the night is still and sleep beckons. Rest easy, knowing that the dangers of the past are now just stories, and you are safe here in the present. May your dreams be as peaceful as the dawn that awaits, and may you always find hope and the courage of those who came before. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more when history hits Snooze content.